So this will be a short intro into using the latest version of RapidReg. First off, it comes with an installer, so you no longer have to drag files into your preferences directory. So if I fire this up, I can accept the terms, can install, and then once this is installed, I can finish. And now I'll just go ahead and start Maya. Currently, it only works in 2023, but I'm looking at making it backwards compatible to at least 2022 and then supporting further versions. But now that it's in Python 3, I won't be supporting anything earlier than that. So let's create a new scene here, and I will go to my Windows settings, preferences, plugin manager, and once that pops up, go to the very bottom here, and you should see RapidReg Modular version 3. So I'll choose loaded and auto load. So that way when I start up Maya again, it'll be there. And by loading it, you'll see that you get the rrm3 shelf. So we have the similar buttons as before, but the UI is something completely different. So let me just close this out of the way, give myself a bit more space. So here we can create a new proxy reg. Now, this is a little bit more clear on how this works. So if I click on this now, rather than some information being here and some elsewhere, you get everything in this UI, and there's a bunch of presets here, and they're numbered just because of file ordering. So the data is saved to like a JSON file instead now. But anyway, you can use a template or not. You can set your left and right prefixes, and I'll just start with typical biped, and I'll go ahead and create this. And we'll talk about some of the things that are different here. Now, these render as like solid sort of things, just a nice visual thing. One of the bigger changes, or a couple of the bigger changes, are in the UI itself. You want to create new elements. So let's say I wanted to create a new arm off of, say, here. Rather than scrolling through a list, I can click on arm. It'll give me these settings. I can give it a name, arm2. I can set my number of twist joints. So this is fairly similar to what we're used to, and I can, again, do the tune arms if I like. I could do a pair of arms. So let's create another set of arms off of here, and I'll just drag this out of the way. Go, and I'll just push that back. So there's our arm. Yeah, so all these are here with your different settings. Again, a little cleaner to scroll through. Now, one thing that's a bit different is the editing as well. So if I switch over to the editing mode or edit modules, you'll see that you get nothing here. And again, this is to reduce clutter and scrolling. So instead, what I can do is I can hit this reload whenever, and I can go through here. It'll give me a list of all the potential or all the existing modules that I want. So if I wanted, say, fingers, I could do that. And when I load that in, you'll see that for the fingers, it loads in whatever the current settings are. So for example, if I go back to thumb, you can see that that's one chain and four joints per chain. And if I switch back to finger, I get 4 and 4. And if I want, I can just reset it. So if I were to go to thumb, for example, because 4 and 4 is a default, I can hit reset, and I can apply edits to the thumb. And without even selecting the thumb, it loads in. Now it's loading with default values, so you'd have to go in and kind of clean that up. But let's undo that. And also, you can just select the module that you want. So let's say I wanted to work on the spine, I could just select that and say load selected, and then it's there rather than having to use this. So you have the option of selecting from the existing ones or loading the selected one in. Now, if you create new ones, this doesn't automatically refresh, so you just can hit the refresh button to load anything new that's added. The other thing that's nice as like a little quality of life improvement is for FK chains, often these are used for fingers, and so by default they're numbered. However, I can give them specific prefixes. So instead of it being 0, 1, this would be index. Now, if you use the template for a biped, it'll automatically set these to be index, by middle, ring, and pinky, and then here I could set this to be thumb, which I probably should make the default anyway, but there we go. So now I can set that to thumb. But yeah, if you were to create a new set of FK chains, let's just do a new one. So call this FK test. Make sure I'm on part 1. And so now with these ones recorded, we can see that if I click on these, they're all just set to numbered, and you set the number by clicking on the very first one. And when you do this, it'll automatically set it to the other side as well. So this is one thing that's been changed as well. If you do something to one side, the other side will often reflect. So if I were to set this one to say big, for example, if I look at this side, well, that's way over here, that's now set to big. And if I were to set it back to index, this one gets set back to index as well. So just for ease of use, so you don't have to only work on one side versus the other. Another thing that's changed is the control orientation. So there is no longer an option for setting the twist axis for like spines and things like that. So, and I'll go over that after the rig is created. So in the fit proxies to character, it's cleaned up a little bit. So we still have the same ways of coloring as before. So if I want to change this module to a different color, I can. I can clone, so the cloning are to take, say, the arm here. This is similar to before, so I can clone this like rrm3 in this case, and I can clone selected module. One thing that's been added is you can add a custom suffix. So let's say I just want 4, and then I could just load in the names here, and I can put in arm here, and apply to all, and then we'll just do that. So if I were to change this to 3, apply to all, it'll just swap that number. So that way you don't have to like rename everything, but let's just change that to 4, or well, let's do 3. So we'll keep this as 3, and then I'll clone it. And so now if I grab these, you can see I have like the extras. I'm going to go ahead and delete these because I'm getting a lot of stuff in here. But yeah, if I'm ready to go, I can choose to mirror or not. I can do my all left to right. Another thing that's been changed, I think it's changed anyway, is if you were to say module and you say left to right or right to left, it doesn't matter which side you have selected, it'll just mirror correctly based on that. So again, I'm just going to clean some of the stuff up. So we just have our basic biped view. Okay, so let's say I've kind of posed out my character and I'm ready to go to the next stage. Or let's say I want to add like some twist joints in the arm. Let's do that really quick. So I'll go back to my edit module, load this in, and I will just make it 2 and 2 for the upper and lower by the edits. There we go. And last thing we'll do before we build is we have the saving and loading transforms is now stored here. And this is much cleaner. This is saved as JSON data. So it should be prone to less errors with updates to future rigs. It just holds just values rather than trying to do set adders and crazy stuff like that. So, okay, let's go to the generate rig now. So same as before, we can add a custom prefix to our rig. Generally, I don't recommend this. You should be building one rig per scene and then using file referencing, and that's where you can set the kind of prefixes through the namespace. But if you have to, you can use this. And then we have the option to create single hierarchy joint chains. And one thing that's been added to this is all this stuff happens here now, rather than you have to generate and then wait for the post build to be to have the option to create the single hierarchy joints. Then you can also set your settings all here. And you can connect the joint scale right now. Also new is using Unreal naming conventions, which uses _L and _R at the end of the joints for the single hierarchy, and that works better for mirroring in Unreal, especially if you're setting up like physics volumes and things like that. Okay, so once I have this, I can generate my rig, and you'll get progress bar here, which will tell you what step it's on. So it's building the arms, fingers, all that stuff. Oh, apparently I didn't do a very good job of cleaning up my rig. I had a bunch more stuff in there. Maybe I'll just delete this and build a new one. I will just create a new proxy rig. Okay, I'll delete the existing. and then I'll just do create. Okay, I'll just quickly pose this again, just to give me something, and then I'll just also set this to be the thumb. Okay, all left to right. Okay, let's generate again. So I'll just generate like this, cleaner. Okay, so here's our rig. So what's different about this? Well, one of the biggest differences is the orientation of controls. So normally we're used to X being down the chain, which is generally follows the joints. However, in Rapid Rig 3, Rapid Rig Modular 3, to um, leverage mirrored translation and rotation. So normally when we have a rig or like a rig setup, usually there's some shenanigans done like this to mirror orientation. So if we grab these and I rotate them, you can see you get like the mirrored rotation. However, when you translate, you get opposites. And this is what is sort of the default in most rigs. However, in Rapid Rig 3, we can, Modular 3, we get this mirrored rotation, but we also get mirrored translation. Now, there's a weird thing with Maya. If you grab it in the center, it doesn't mirror, but you can do per axis or if you're manipulating the value. So if I do Z, you see that it slides those in a mirrored behavior. So that's one of the biggest differences is that joints are still oriented down X, but the controls are down Z. Okay, so, and that's why there's no other like options for setting the axis for twisting and stuff like that. Okay, so most of the modules still behave the same. Nothing too crazy there. However, one thing that's been changed is if I switch to IK mode now, there are, let me do this to both arms so we can compare. Now, this works in world space. This is the world IK control. So if I rotate, it's based on world orientations and world movement. So what's new is if you grab these and change the control type viz, we can switch to mirror control. And then these will have the mirrored behavior. So you can show both, and the mirrored controls are children of the world controls. So you can rotate these like this, and then you can also grab the ones underneath to rotate mirrored behavior. So you can use whichever one you want. I'll just go back to the worlds, and some of the control shapes are obviously new and different. Now, one thing that's been added as well is the IKFK attribute now exists on pretty much all of these controls. So if I were to go to any of these, I can switch the IKFK. So that way I don't have to necessarily use this one. I can grab any of these and switch. And that's the same for legs as well. So if I were to grab like this control for the leg, which is the like the main hip control, but from here I can set again this to be FK or IK. Okay, so those are some of the improvements, I guess you could call them, to the rig itself. I think most of this stuff is fairly similar. So if I were to grab all my controls here, zero them all out. Oh yeah, this is one thing that's new. So let's talk about this too. So the applying your rest pose has been updated to be a little easier to use. So before you had to specify your axis. now if you grab the controls and let's switch this over to FK, if I grab these and I set these to apply nearest world space rotation, what that means is pointing the control down one of the axes. So if I press this, you can see that the arms pop into being like that. Now, if that's not the way you want, if I want the arms down, I could just aim them down a little bit more, and then they'll point that way. And if I want them twisted inward, I could do that, and then apply again, and there we go. So it just aligns them to the world. So let me do this again. So I'll just grab these, and then these. So that ended up going the wrong way, so I just need to like bend them a little bit more just to kind of imply the direction I want them to go, and we'll do that here. And then we can record that rest pose. And so now I can switch back and forth between my bind pose and my rest pose. Now, in addition, if you, let's say, you need to rebuild the rig or you lose this or something, you can actually save these to a file. So grab the rig here, press that again. So you could save this anywhere, like in your data directory or whatever, and then you could load it back on. It just saves as a rest pose RP file format, and then you could load that back onto another one by using load, and that will only find you the ones that are typed. Okay, so let's put it back to the rest pose. Okay, and control appearance. So this is the same stuff, but in addition, you can now save shapes and colors and load shapes and colors. So again, if you have different rigs and you want to be able to, you know, there's slightly variance, slight differences, you can use this to save data out and load data in. Okay, so joint settings. This is still for renaming to like motion builder settings, where you can rename your joints. So let me set that back. And let's just turn on everything but the single hierarchy joint chain here. So if I want to rename the arm, I can do things a little bit easier. So I have auto mirror. So if I were to set to rename, oh, okay, there we go. I don't know what happened there. So that's left shoulder. Oops. I think I'm clicking too fast. Okay, let's try again. This is the, yeah, because I have mirrored on that turn. So right here, if I have my leg hip L, like hip R, I could just say that's the right leg. So that renamed all that. And there we go. And I can rename the hips and rename the spine and the neck and head if I want, or whatever I need to do for the fingers. The fingers. And do I have a metacarpal? No, I don't. And that should have named the other side as well. So there we go. Okay. So that's pretty much most of the good stuff in the rig. I think that's, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's majorly groundbreaking. Yeah, not really. Oh, actually, yes, fingers. So now that these are built, I've reduced the number of controls down significantly. So you just have like this one here, and I've moved the attributes to the first control here. So the standard control has, you know, transit, rotate, scale, whereas these ones have the curl, yaw, and twist. And I should have built this with the IK, but if you have IK enabled, these attributes are shared on the IK ones, which is why I don't need the extra control. There's still this one here because this does all the curls and does some things like spreads. So this one does more like what affects everything, whereas these ones affect the individuals. But if you don't like that control there, you can also turn its visibility off. Now, if you want to get it back, you can just go to any of these and turn it back on again. So you can turn it on and off from any of those. So if you have something like the thumb where you really only have one chain, you may just want to turn that off. Okay, So I think that's good there. So let's go on to the selector script. So I'm going to fire this up. And this is a whole bunch of new. So let's just select all the controls. Select all. I'm just going to zero them all out. Or actually, I have my reset transforms, reset channels. There we go. Everything reset. And shrink this over. So how this works is you can pose the character and then load in the buttons based on world space. It'll try its best to like populate. Now it's just using a simple background image, but we could switch to say well, let's pose it first. So I'm just going to do a couple things. I'm going to jump back here. I'm going to set the rig in the rest pose. I'm just going to load the rest pose. Okay. And so if I do a new snapshot, what I could do is right click here and I could say retake snapshot. And what this will do is it'll orient based on those changes. So let's go in and I'm going to rotate these like this. And I can retake my snapshot again. And that spreads these out a little bit better. Now, I'm also going to match my IK because I can see that my IK controls are down here. If I switch this, I can see they're down there. So that's why I'm getting some controls down there. That might be okay. I'll just leave it like that. But yeah, with these buttons here, I can click and drag to select. And I could do things like, well, right now, if I'm in FK mode, right, I can see the difference here. So on anything that has that IKFK attribute, I can right click on that control and I could say match FK controls to IK or match IK controls to FK. So I'm going to take my IK controls, match them to FK, and that'll pop it there. Now, what's cool about this is if I have one of the other controls selected, and now I right click on one of these, I can say match IK, it'll do both sides. So I can do both sides simultaneously. And it's also batchable, which I'll go over in a second. So now I have those matching, and again, I can retake my snapshot if I like. Let's go ahead and do that. And now all those controls are like this. Now, if I select some on one side, I can say select paired controls. So it'll select the ones on the other side. And I can press shift as I'm dragging. So I can shift, I can control click to deselect as I'm click dragging. And yeah, when I did this like paired, I can also use my shift. So if I highlight those again, I can, if I hold down the shift key when I click select paired, it'll shift select them. And I can also say select module controls. So it'll select all the controls of that module. So if I were to go on the spine, it's like select module controls. Now, if I right click into open space here, so yeah, obviously like this is context sensitive depending on what you're clicking on. Right, we also have the space switching. So if I were to, let's say, switch to FK, and if I rotate the shoulder up, and I want to change this space to, say, the main, it moves. So what I can do, though, is if I right-click on the shoulder, I can say follow main, and I'll switch it to main space, and it will stay locked in place. So all that stuff is in the right-click menu on the button. So if you have those attributes, you can basically do that there. Okay, so yeah, right-clicking here, we saw that we have the retake snapshot. And so what that will do is it'll record the button's layout based on the world space. So you could pose it and then take your snapshot. We could also do a little bit of cleanup, so we can hide button labels if you don't want to see the labels. We can sync button visibility to scene. So if you don't want to see like the micro controls or the IK controls from your FK, you could just click that, and then it will only show you the controls that are visible. And we can set it back to show all buttons and everything will come back. You could also select certain buttons and you can say, well, maybe you have to do this in the other mode, I think. Okay, yeah. So let's talk about the other mode then. So there's a few more things we can do. So if I right click in here, I could say resize button layout. So obviously like this is getting to be a bit too big. Where's my window? There it is. Okay. My button layout size it's basically tightly fitting to the UI. So what I could do is set it to 80%, for example, and it'll shrink all of them down. Now there's a bit of a bug here where if you do it again, it'll like get bigger. I'm just trying to figure that one out. But in any case, this gives us a little bit better of a size. If I don't like that size, I can try to resize again. But again, there's like a bit of a bug here. Let's just make it like 90, see what happens. Yeah, that worked. That made it way smaller. So I'm just going to retake my snapshot here. And let's just do resize button layout. I'm going to do, not sure why that takes so long to come up, but I think I can work on that. I'm going to do 70%. Yeah. All right. And so that'll give me a bit more space to sort of move things around. I can also, let's talk about this. Yeah, so okay. So let's say I have this background image, but it's not really representative of my character. So if I have an image, I can load it to the background. So let me just move this out of the way. Okay, I'm going to go to my front view here. And I'm just going to hit A to sort of center it. And I'm just going to take a screenshot of this. Something like this. Try to make it kind of square. Okay. And now I have this image that I've just created. And I'm just going to save this. Oh, okay, that was weird. I have too much going on with my graphics card. Yeah, I'll just throw this on my desktop and I'll say, I'll call this my demo character G. Okay, and now if I go back in here, I can right click here and I can say set background image. And then I can go to my desktop and choose that image. So this is quite a bit bigger. This might be too big. So I can set background or resize background image. Second, and I'll make it like 80%. And I can also tell it to adjust button positions to match. So if I make this smaller, it'll make the button smaller. I'll just do that for the sake of that. And there we go. Now it's a bit smaller. Maybe it's still a little too big. So let's resize one more time. Another 80%. Okay, that's more reasonable. Okay, I'll do my snapshot again. Hey, that actually fits really well. But it might be, like they're a little too big. So, okay, so let's talk about some more things. So in here, there's this mode. So this is currently the select control mode. I'm going to toggle this to the edit buttons mode. You could also do it by right clicking and doing it here. But this is a visual display so you know which mode you're in. So when you're in the edit mode, when you drag select, it's not going to select anything in your scene, but it allows you to move the buttons around. So I can click and drag, I can move things around. So one of the biggest things is like, okay, let's grab all these fingers. I'm going to move those over. I have a bug. It's not recognizing. Okay, I'm going to do a little thing here and try reloading it. So I'm going to actually save my layout. So if I were to close this window and reopen it, I would lose all this information. So I'm going to save my layout. And this gets stored onto the rig. So now if I were to reload, and now it's all there. Just see if this works. Toggle. No, okay. Okay, well, I'll just work with it as is. Bug defects. Okay, so one of the things that can be difficult is like, you're moving controls around. Actually, I'm going to select all these and I'm going to resize button. So I'm going to make these a little bit smaller. So by default, they're 60 by 30. So I'm going to make them like 30 by 30, just so they're a little easier to space. Okay, so what I can do is I have a few options here. Is like, okay, let's say here's all my over. I can highlight these and I can say, okay, align center horizontal. Oh, that was meant vertical. Let's redo that. Let's align to the left. There we go. I can align to the right or center. I can also say average vertical spacing, so that way it evenly spaces them out. Still a difficult thing to space all these out, but let's see, that's on the finger index, middle, and pinky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my index 1 and I have my pinky 4. So these are like the two ends. So this is the first control of the first joint and the last control of the last chain. So first joint of first chain, last joint of the last chain. And so if I have those kind of spaced out the way I'd like, what I can now do is right click. And because this is FK, you don't get this in the others. I can right click and I can say layout FK controls as grid. And now I can choose, do I want the chains to go horizontally or vertically? So I'll choose horizontal, and there we go. So now I have these chains all set up, and I can select all these, and I can right click and I can say symmetrize left to right, and now it's the same on both sides. And then I can save my layout again, so that way the next time I load it, it'll have those changes. Yeah, I have to fix this bug, but to give myself more space. But anyway, yeah, I can go through and move these around, symmetrize, give my spacing however I like. And then when I'm done, I could just switch back to select mode, and then I can drag to select these, select vertically to get those. Oh, let's turn on controls. Well, yeah, they're there. Yeah, so yeah, we can see drag like that. And again, I can shift select to deselect, and I grab these, I can do my select paired, and now I can rotate, do all that stuff. Okay, so I'll talk about a couple more things. There's the reset transforms, reset channels, that just put everything back at the defaults. And let's say I have my animation. So I'm just going to set a couple keys here. So I'm going to set key there and there for my shoulder. Let's rotate the elbow too. So from there till there. Okay. So at any frame, I can right click and I can say, match FK to IK or IK controls to FK. Now I'm in that mode. But what I can also do is set a batch. So batch settings. So anything that's right clickable or anything you right click on that has this batchable, it'll use whatever settings are down here. So if I set it to timeline and I choose match IK controls to FK, it'll go through and make that animation to IK, and now it's in IK mode. So this has been simplified, so it doesn't run through the animation twice, but some things do. So for example, if I have animation on this control, actually that's not a good example. Let's do, I'll animate my root, like that. And I want this to be in, actually, so let's do root secondary. So I'm going to set key here and a key there. And a key there. Okay, so I have this like root secondary motion, and I'd like this control to follow that, but obviously it pops. So I can right click, let me just hide sync to visibility, spline forward. All right, let's toggle edit. Just gonna shrink all these a little bit. 40 by 20. Okay. All right, there's my top. Okay, So if I, let's switch back to select mode, and if I right click on this, I can set it to be root secondary, and now it will batch the animation, but make it follow the root secondary. So if I grab this control, I can see that it's set to follow the root secondary, but it stayed in its position that I was in before for that entire timeline. Okay, and yeah, there's select left controls, select right controls, select center controls, and all these are shift clickable. So if I select left, I want to click right as well. I can just press the shift. I can press control to deselect anything. That works here too. So if I control select, I can deselect. Yeah, that's I think that's most of the good stuff. Oh, actually, okay. So now that we have the rig built, we have some data here. Let's take a look at the rebuild rig. So in here, there's some new options. So preserve current skinning and weights has been improved. This should have better coverage regardless of what type of skinning method you use, unless you get it like Delta Mush and things like that. But if you're doing a bind skin, it should work with any of those. You can choose to keep the current shape. So let's say I went in and example, I'll just make these controls a bit bigger. And we can also preserve the keyframes and channel values. So this is new. And then if you have, like, let's say you assign some things to your own layers. So those are all those layers. Now, when we rebuild the rig, it'll remember all those settings. So let's give this a shot. And this will tell us our progress as it's going. I'm sure we want to rebuild. It's not undoable. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so it's building the rig. Loading, and now it's loading all the rig data. So this is the rest pose and the animations. You can see the animations back on. The controls remember their size. We have our layer one, which still has that on there. And then we also have, if I go back and let's just reset all my controls. Go back to my control settings. I can still load the rig into the rest pose. All that stuff. And one more thing I'll quickly show is, like, let's say we wanted to build a second rig in our scene, or well, actually, let's just save this without animation. So I'll select them. Okay. And yeah, let's just reset everything back to default. So let's go save this on my desktop. Oops, or in my close ref test. Okay, I'll create a new scene, and I'll just close these windows, and I'll load in my reference. Okay. And I'll go to my reference editor. So there we go. And I'll just call this R1. And then I'll create another reference of the same character. Start 2. Now, if we had like completely different rigs, this might make more sense. But if I load up the selector script now, I'll get a tab for each rig that has whatever settings. And you can see that this file has been saved and all this data loads in with it. So if I were to load in, say, a third rig that's like, let's try this one, see if this works or not. This is an older file, but let's try loading up selector script. There. So yeah, It remembers the images associated. This is a test with using just a randomly different image. So yeah, that's that's all the stuff, I think. Oh yeah, you can also mirror for mirroring the poses with batches and right pose to left pose to right. So that's same as before. But I think that's pretty much everything I want to talk about. So there it is. It's in beta mode right now. Obviously, there's more bugs to fix, as we saw a couple there, but it's getting close to ready to release.